and to help us talk some Major League Baseball. It's an awesome honor to welcome on Tom Glavine, Hall of Fame pitcher, class of 2014, Braves commentator, and two-time Cy Young Award winner. Tom, really appreciate you joining the show. How's everything going?
Everything's great. I appreciate you guys having me on. So, just a good Sunday at the ballpark.
Absolutely. Well, let's start with your Braves, Tom. Obviously, a rough start to the year, starting 0-7, but Acuña's back now. Strider's back. We know the division's tough with the Mets and the Phillies, but what do you think Atlanta's going to have to do here, second half of the season, to make that push towards the playoffs?
Well, I think in terms of the overall structure of the team, so to speak, a couple things. I think that starting pitching has to continue to do what it's been doing, which has been really good. And I think the offense has to kind of find its groove a little bit. Certainly having Ronald back has been a positive for the offense, but I think all of us who have followed this team and know what this team is capable of doing, we're all kind of waiting for that point in time where the offense really starts to click on all cylinders. It really hasn't done that yet. He's had a couple guys here and there at times, but when this team's rolling, I tend to look at things from a starting pitcher's point of view. When this offense is rolling, there's nowhere for an opposing pitcher to go to try and hunt for outs. That the lineup is deep. Everybody can hurt you, and that just hasn't been the case so far this year, but I think we're all anxiously awaiting for that to happen.
Tom, when you're this deep into the season, nearly 60 games, how do you get that offense out of the rut and start it to perform consistently to the way that we know that it can?
Well, certainly part of it starts with, having Acuña back, right? I mean, that he's certainly the catalyst at the top of the lineup. But, when you have him back and all of a sudden you start looking at, even just the first inning as an opposing pitcher, you're going out there, you're trying to kind of get your feet under you. You're trying to kind of get into the groove of the game a little bit. You got to go out there and face, Acuña, Riley, Ozuna, and Olsen. So, it's not an easy start to the game. And that's much different than when Ronald's not leading off to start the first of an inning. So having him back adds a different dynamic. It makes the lineup deeper. But I think, too, listen, guys are going to go through some ruts during the course of the year. Guys are going to have a slow start, and then they're going to start to figure some things out. So, I think we're all hoping that's the case. Michael Harris has struggled, but he had a couple of free hits yesterday, so hopefully that's a sign of things to come for him. Matt Olson starting to drive the ball kind of gap to gap, which is always a good sign with him. So hopefully it's just a case, like I say, where guys are in a little bit of a funk, but over the course of time they're going to figure it out and they're going to become a dangerous lineup.
Tom, obviously Chris Sale's been with the club for the last couple of years and won the Cy Young last year, going to be a future Hall of Famer. From one lefty pitcher to another, what do you love so much about watching his game and when he takes the mound every start?
Well, I just love his compete level, I mean, he just goes out there and he gets after it. And it's been fun to watch him here in Atlanta to be healthy and go out and do the things that he's capable of doing and that he knows he can do. I know he's expressed a lot of disappointment about how things went for him in Boston in terms of his health. It started out great there in Boston, but, then the injury bug hit him. And a lot of crazy injuries, not necessarily baseball-related injuries, but just some crazy things that kind of derailed him. And he's been healthy since he's been here and, taking a regular turn. And like I said, just fun to watch. He just goes out and he gets after it. He competes. Obviously, he's got great stuff. But, to me, he's kind of that throwback guy that just when he gets on the mound, it's, I'm out here to get guys out however I have to do it. And if he's got to make adjustments during the course of a game, he does. But, it's just fun to watch.
Tom, I'm curious. You'd said a little bit earlier that you watch the game from the perspective of a pitcher. Makes a ton of sense. We got a lot of good ones across Major League Baseball. How do you watch pitchers now that you are, you have such a unique perspective doing it at a high level? You're now retired from the game. How do you watch the guys that are playing in this generation?
It's hard because I can't relate, obviously, to the stuff that's in the game. I mean, that's not how I pitch. That's not how many guys in my era pitched. I mean, obviously we had guys that had better stuff than others, but not the kind of stuff you see in today's game. And it's a little bit different mentality, right? So much emphasis is placed on velocity. So much emphasis is placed on swing and miss. And that's just different from what I did. But at the same time, you can still look at guys in today's game and see guys that are of a different level than everybody else, right? I mean, stuff is rampant in the game, but there are still guys that are able to go out there and pitch better than others. And okay, so why are they able to do that? And I don't think that part has changed very much. It's still, if you stay out of the middle of the plate, you got a chance to get guys out, right? And I think the guys who throw hard, who have good secondary pitches and stay out of the middle of the plate are the guys that are successful. Much like in my day, guys in my day, regardless of the stuff you had, you tried to stay out of the middle of the plate, and I think for today's game, for today's pitchers, I think that mentality has been lost a little bit because everybody relies on velocity and stuff so much that you figure, well, if I've got stuff and I throw it down the middle, I got a chance to get away with it. Well, yeah, that might be true, but that's still a dangerous area for anybody to be pitching in. So that's kind of what I look at, is I look at those guys who have the stuff, but they also have the command in the sense of staying out of the middle of the zone and kind of watch what they do in order to be successful. And quite frankly, I wonder why more guys don't try to do that.
We're talking with Hall of Famer Tom Glavine, class of 2014, also Braves commentator, two-time Cy Young Award winner. Tom, anybody in today's game that, if given the chance, you would have loved to face when you were pitching, right? I mean, so many great hitters, Ohtani, Judge, Acuna, you could go down the list. Anybody you watch in today's game that you would have loved to face?
Well, I mean, love to face might be a strong word, but, enjoy the challenge? Sure. I mean, Absolutely. Some of those guys you just named, Acuna, Ohtani, Mike Trout when he was healthy, Aaron Judge. Yeah, I mean, listen, those guys are the guys that bring the best out of you, right? It's like me facing Barry Bonds or Albert Pujols or Tony Gwynn. I mean, those guys are the best of the best, and they bring out the best in you. And those individual confrontations, so to speak, were always an interesting and fun part of the game. And, it didn't always go your way, but, a lot of times it did. And I think it was just that cat and mouse game of trying to get those guys out in a game over the course of 3 or 4 at-bats, or several times over the course of the year, and how that cat and mouse game evolved and how you made adjustments, how they made adjustments, and, just always trying to stay ahead of the curve on an individual basis. But I think that was always the intriguing, fun part of a game for me, is when you would look at a lineup, you're trying to dissect how you're going to get guys out. You're trying to pick those, 1 or 2 guys in a lineup that weren't going to beat you. And when it was a Pujols or a Bonds or a Tony Gwynn, like I said, those are the matchups that you knew it was going to take your best to get those guys out. But those were the ones that brought the best out in you.
Tom, at the beginning of the season, there was such a big conversation surrounding the Dodgers and their pay scale, and is this good for baseball? Is this not good for baseball? I'm curious as to what your thoughts are with this team that's so good, that has this payroll that has its own gravitational pull, it feels like. Is that good for the sport?
I don't know. On the one hand, the player side of me says, well, you know what? It's their money, let them spend it. The other side of me is like, my God, how many more of these guys can they go out and get? And it's crazy. I think one thing that's always been good in our sport is, the highest payroll doesn't necessarily always win. Now, I understand it gives you a better chance on a year in, year out basis, more so than, say, a team like the Pirates that has to develop their own guys and try to keep everybody together. I mean, obviously that's a much bigger challenge, but, higher payroll didn't always equate to World Series champion in our sport, and I think that's always been a good thing. But there's no question that, the Dodgers going out and being able to do what they do financially is going to bring this question up. And I don't know if it's good for the game or not, to be honest with you. But I know that everybody's gunning for the Dodgers, and there are plenty of teams out there who think they can beat the Dodgers regardless of what their payroll is. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, Tom, right now, I mean, the National League is so strong. When you kind of look at it big picture, who is the team right now you think is best equipped to beat L.A. at this point in the National League?
Man, that's a tough question. That's a good question. Look, I think these Braves still might have a chance before things are all said and done because their pitching is so good, and I think they're going to hit more. Philly, certainly has a very good offensive ball club and a tough pitching staff as well, so I think they'll have some things to say. The Cubs, I think, have been a little bit of a surprise for everybody so far this year. So, listen, it's baseball, it's why people get so frustrated, I think, at times in the media when they talk to players, because, baseball is almost more than any other sport full of so many cliches, but the fact of the matter is that a lot of them are true. And as a player, I've lived it. I see it now as a fan. You can sit here and talk about a team today, and a month from now it's going to be a completely different story. And I think that's what makes the game so much fun. And as we sit here today, we can talk about, hey, who are the teams that are going to contend and who has a chance? A month from now, that conversation is going to be different. And as we've seen so often in this game, when you get into the playoffs, more times than not, it's the team that's playing hot at the end of the year. And who knows who that's going to be. But, there's some solid competition in the National League this year, no question about it. I think the Dodgers would, be a safe bet for anybody if you were going to place a bet on who's going to win. I mean, that would be the safe bet. But I think there's a strong argument to be made for a couple other teams that feel like they could beat them as well.
Tom, you're a Hall of Famer. I feel like the Baseball Hall of Fame is the most prestigious of the bunch in American professional sports. Do you think that Hall of Fame gets tainted if Pete Rose gets in?
I don't know if tainted is the word. Listen, I don't think it's an easy foregone conclusion that Pete's going to get in. Listen, I think there are a lot of players that feel strongly in terms of supporting what was Pete's ban from the Hall of Fame. So I still think there's going to have to be a lot of discussion, and there will be a lot of discussion about it. But I don't know. It's one of those things that, listen, I get people's arguments and I get people's feelings about it. I mean, it's nobody's going to argue that Pete doesn't have the numbers to get in the Hall of Fame. Of course he does. But then it becomes the moral issue of, we've only ever had one golden rule in baseball. And that, right. Pete broke that golden rule. So, I mean, that's something that I think is going to be a tough obstacle for a lot of guys in the Hall of Fame to come to grips with, but we'll see.
Do you think he should be in?
I'm still undecided on it. I probably still lean more towards no, just because of what he did. But again, I think it's, I'm open for the debate. I can be persuaded if, people have a strong enough argument as to why they think he should get in, given the circumstances of why he hasn't been in. But I would say that right now I would side slightly on the side of no.
Tom Glavine joining us here on Inside the Betting Lines. Hall of Fame pitcher, class of 2014, Braves commentator, two-time Cy Young Award winner. Tom, we really appreciate the time. It was great talking to you. Hope to do it again soon.
All right, guys. I appreciate it. Have a great Sunday.
Yep, you as well. Tom Glavine, Denton, not every day you get to kick off show talking to a Hall of Famer.